Hi everyone, welcome back for the afternoon session of today's conference. I have with me today the lovely Monica Ferrie from the Genetic Support Network of Victoria. We're going to take you through the advocacy campaign for newborn screening. So we have worked on this. We just sat down before and spoke about it for about 12 months, working on this project to get newborn screening across the line in each state. I will say it hasn't been an easy process. We thought it might have been a little bit quicker, but we're still going.
And we're not there yet.
We think we're close, and hopefully in the next few weeks, there may be some movement. So let's tell you about what we've been doing and about the process of how it's done. It's not easy. Let's be fair.
It's not easy, and it takes lots of collaboration.
That's right. So obviously our aim is to secure a nationwide implementation of SMA screening tests for all Australian children, no matter where they're born. And we've been working at this with obviously Monica from GSNV, and Novartis Australia have also been a great collaborator in this project. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So in 2019, we made an application to the health department, and to even get that application ready, it's a 70-page document. You need to have intensive information in there. How much it costs, what the benefits are, a whole range of things. And we actually had an external person help us with that application. As a patient organisation group, there's no way that I can give that information myself. I need a clinician or a champion to be able to help with that process. It then goes to a review process. So it goes to the Department of Health and they conduct a review. Because SMA was reviewed before the current process, there was a couple of other steps. So normally it then would go to the Chief Medical Officer. So we skipped all those because we were prior to this new cohort.
Yeah, so the new process was introduced at the end of last year.
Yeah. So we had to go through the standing committee, we had to get approved, and then through COVID, all that was disbanded. So we sort of sat in limbo for a long time. And then we got recommended in September 21, I think. God, I can't even remember anymore. So basically a recommendation comes from the federal health department, or the feds, as we call them, and each state must have the budget to implement their own program. And that is legislated around Australia. Easy in theory, actually really hard in practicability, because we're still here 12 months later and we haven't got anyone across the line yet.
Well, we've got a couple of pilot programs. So that's sometimes really important, to get a pilot program off the ground, because that can then translate into a program that becomes a long-standing program. So that's happened.
Yes, it has, and that's happened in Western Australia. And obviously the initial pilot program from New South Wales ACT is still continuing. So there are people obviously that are still, getting access to newborn screening, but unfortunately there are some states that aren't getting access to newborn screening, and that's what we're desperately trying to plug the hole and fix. So I've just looked on my slide. Late 2020, the recommendation was made. I was close, but no cigar. Oh, goodness. So it's a long, arduous journey, as this slide sort of says. There's lots of considerations in process. It's not easy. It's not just, here, have this application, you pass it, it gets approved, and it goes to the states and everyone says, hey, hunky-dory, thank you very much. It is not. We have spent the last, next slide, please, because that doesn't work for me. Thank you. We have spent the last 12 months in advocating to not only MPs, but health departments. We send countless emails every week to have meetings with people and
when you're trying to get a decision across the line with a state, you need departmental support and you need support from the government of the day as well. So you need to be having conversations as we are having ad nauseum with Department of Health representatives in each state, with MPs in each state, and like all of these decisions, we've been working to go as high up the tree politically and also departmentally as possible to get the decision across the line.
And that doesn't take 5 minutes, you know. You just getting onto some of these people is really hard, you know. Then you've got to have a Zoom meeting and then you've got to follow up, and you know,
had state elections.
Oh yes, we've had state elections and people have disappeared, and you know, we're talking to high-level health ministers here in each state. We're talking to federal and state MPs. And times that by everything. So there's 7 states and territories, you know, so we've got to consider every single one of these states and territories separately. They're all their own entity, and you choose one state at a time and you work your way down the tree. So that has been interesting as well, because, you know, there's people that don't want a bar review to start with. Oh no, we're busy, we've got COVID. And that came out a lot. Yes. We can't fund you, we've got COVID funding and we're too busy. And I think that's been a lot of the slowing down of the process. COVID has put that in.
I think too, timing is important, because decisions to fund a new condition onto a newborn screening panel, that's about when the money becomes available.
Yeah.
So governments have budget cycles. States have budget cycles. The federal government has a budget cycle. So not only do you need the money allocated, but your timing has to fit with the sequence of planning that's going on in that state as well. So that requires putting your hand up every now and again and saying, hey, remember us? We were here a few months ago and now we're here again, because we know that we're coming closer to your decision-making period.
And you need to realise that we're here, we're not stopping, and we're coming for you, you know. We
have used that expression a couple of times.
We definitely have.
Be aware, we're coming for you.
Next slide, please. So, you know, obviously our approach is to leverage competitive nature between states. And let me tell you, there is no state out there that wants to be beaten by another state. It is very, very competitive. For example, I had a conversation with Tasmania, and you mentioned that, oh, there's a pilot program in Western Australia. Well, we can't be beaten by WA now, can we? So, you know, they want to be in the forefront, but they all want to be seen as leaders. So I think moving forward, once one of them drops, I think we'll see a flow-on effect. And we're just about at that finish line. There's a few that are in the background that we've got meetings with, and hopefully there's some announcements coming. So hopefully, you know, that creates that flow-on effect, because no one wants to be last. They all want to be first.
It's the question all the MPs ask. Is it, what other states is this happening in? Who's before us? Where are they at?
Yeah.
So it's been really important for us to be working on them all at the same time, to be able to roll out, well, you know, this state is a step ahead of you right now, and to try and get some leverage from that. And that, as Julie said, we're really hoping that once one state says, yes, we are in, that will create enormous leverage, because we've been poking and prying that
for 12 months now.
Competitiveness.
Yeah, it's definitely there.
For a while.
It's definitely there. Next slide, please. So this has been our strategy. Obviously, our objective is to secure the nationwide implementation of SMA screening tests for all Australian children. So to be able to secure support from our public affairs approach, be simple, targeted, and build momentum by doing all these steps. So considering personalities, as we said, although state governments are all vying for attention, they all need to be treated a little bit differently. Some of them have got personality, some of them are really happy to work with you, others aren't, you know. How do we get around that?
I think that's true, but one thing that's really been heartwarming in the newborn screening space is I have to say newborn screening is politically and at a departmental level, everyone wants it. Everyone understands that newborn screening is a really important health program for us to have implemented across the country. There is real value in it.
Sure.
So philosophically, everyone's in. It's all the practical challenges of, well, what are the barriers? And that's the challenge for us is, well, because we have to help them think about how they overcome those.
A lot of them don't have the testing equipment. So the diagnostics, for example, they need to have that infrastructure in place before they can actually provide mass testing. You know, we're talking about 200,000 to 300,000 babies at a year. So, you know, where's the infrastructure? Do they have it? Are they ready for the diagnostics of it all? You know, do they have staff that can perform the test? You know, yes, you're collecting all the cards, but you know, in the background, is there enough people to make the test happen and give the result? And how does that come back? So it's all a flow-on effect around the circle to make sure, you know, and here we are bringing the facts to the table to make sure that all these steps are manageable for these people, and we're getting things done in a timely manner. You know, I guess we're a little bit unlucky or unlucky. We have another condition called SCID that can be put on the same panel. So some of the states are holding out and waiting for that to be approved as well. So that's sort of disadvantaging us a little. You know, they want to obviously have cost-effective, you know, testing, and you can get bang for your buck 2 for 1, but we can't wait. We don't want to wait. And, you know, we want to be seen as our own entity and, you know, consider us and put us first and make sure that people get access to these testing. Because right now, you know, your postcode determines whether you get access to newborn screening or not. And, you know, that's really important now that we have 3 different treatments for SMA. You know, we want to get, you know, that access to those treatments as quick as possible. So newborn screening is, you know, seriously important. So the other thing that we've been doing is obviously connecting all those states, playing one off against the other.
In a nice way.
In a nice way, yeah. You know, we've been talking to your counterpart in wherever and, you know, how can you help us get ahead of the game in your state? You know, we've got a good couple of allies. You know, there's some people that are really great champions that are like, yep, it's coming, you're close. You know, we just have to follow these steps. So, you know, we're not far away in a couple of states.
And I think that that's part of the challenge of dealing with the different health jurisdictions we've got in this country. I mean, we have the practicalities of different health systems in different states with different workforce issues, with different technological positions, with different funding opportunities. So in looking at each jurisdiction, understanding all of those variables and being able to work with departmental representatives and work with government as well is something that's been really important to being able to take the SMA challenge forward and to be able to learn from the SMA challenge, to be able to take it forward for other rare diseases as well.
You know, we happen to be the test case, but
critical.
You know, this unfortunately has been a long, you know, drawn out process, and we hope that as the test case don't make it as hard for another, you know, patient organisation group coming through, because if this happened every time, man, the system is broken. You know, this should not be happening. And, you know, a health minister or a government's, you know, different priority shouldn't be, you know, impacting on you as an organisation to get this test through. So, you know, that sort of plays into it as well. And, you know, also playing, you know, the states off the feds is really important as well. You know, we've got some really good champions, you know, like Minister Hunt, you know, Milton Dick, for example. We've got some really great champions federally that are really, really behind us. And, you know, then some health ministers at state level, Chris Picton, for example, is a great champion, you know. So it's making sure that we're leveraging each state for maximum benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the first part, as we've said, is actually understanding what that challenge is in each state, what are the barriers, and how can we work with everyone who's involved in developing a solution that's going to be workable and easily, well, nothing's easily implemented, is it, in our health system, but something that is able to be implemented, because that's the most important thing. The federal decision is wonderful. Yes, absolutely. Recommend that it goes on the panel. But the implementation is a state responsibility, will always be a state responsibility. So working with each state is going to continue to be part of the newborn screening challenge.
For sure. And I guess this all comes together when we put a face to it all. So we have families who are involved in the advocacy campaign. They are making sure that, you know, it comes back to, this is what's happening in a family's life. This is how it's relevant to us. We missed out. We didn't miss out. It's changed our life. So bringing that human connection, that human factor back into, you know, the mix of things, media, awareness, you know, awareness is huge. As we've said all day, SMA is not a condition that's commonly known out there. So, you know, to get that awareness and about this important topic is really important. Just before you go, we've got a question from Francesca. Glenn, if you can unmute her, then we will take that question. Go for it.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for all the work you've done in this area. It's just great. I suppose, you know, all the work to lead to that screening being implemented across the states. But then I'm also wondering, what about the work and communication that we should be ready for if and once screening does occur, and if there are positive, outcomes? Who will take responsibility for assisting the families when there is a positive outcome? Would we have a communication booklet? You know, who's going to initiate that? You know, what to tell them what is out there and everything else?
Yeah, so that's currently done out of New South Wales, and that's done through this, or whoever hospital you're diagnosed with. So they have a wonderful program. If somebody does have a newborn screen positive, they're called up. They actually call them personally saying, we need to have you come back in for another test. You've had an abnormal screen. And we've been in the process of developing some new resources for that purpose, where it will talk about what life is like through a newborn screening positive test. You know, it's a different journey for a family. It's not one that's going to be, you know, take your baby home, love it till it dies. There's so many different treatments that you can have, and here's your options, and, you know, what would you like to consider? Also, around that, it's not straightforward, because a lot of the treatments are determined on how mene copy numbers of SMN2 you have. So, for example, Zolgensma, you can only have up to 2 copies. So if you've got more than 2 copies, that you need to have other options. So all that is discussed at a clinician level when you are diagnosed. So things are considered through that process, and that's just coming on board more and more.
I think too, the other thing is that newborn screening programs exist already we have about 25 conditions in every state that are currently on the newborn screening panel. So we have a health system that has systems and processes already built around newborn screening. So while SMA is a specific addition, we have a health system that is quite familiar with how to manage a newborn screening process.
Yeah. We've got another question here from Katie. You've said that the funding of newborn screening implementation will always be a state issue. Haven't Labor federal level pledged millions of dollars to fund newborn screening if they are elected in the upcoming election?
So yes, we are delighted that there has been an announcement of $38 odd million by the Labor Party should they be elected. Now that money will be made available to the states for implementation of newborn screening. And at this stage, we're aware that it could be for equipment. So it could be, so just for example, SMA is a little more complicated as a newborn screening condition because it requires a further step than many of our current conditions that are on the newborn screening panel, a different piece of equipment. So the $38.4 million can be used to purchase equipment to assist in that, in adding newborn screening conditions, or it could be a federal government might use that $38 million to assist states and tag that funding to additions to the newborn screening panel. Newborn screening is as an entity is it's a population screening program. So under the legislation, the health legislation, the Health Act, it actually is a state government responsibility. So the feds can make those announcements and provide money to the states, but it is the states who will determine how that money is spent. So yeah, it's a little complicated. I hope that answers that question.
Hope that answers that question, most definitely. It's definitely not straightforward, let's be fair.
So the states can't, so the federal government, for example, can't say $38 million, every state is going to put SMA on its panel and must use the $38 million to do that. It's not their decision. They can't say that. Wouldn't it be wonderful? And wouldn't it be wonderful then if they said another 38 for the next condition? But
doesn't happen.
That's kind of fantasy land at the moment.
I hope that makes sense and answers your question. Next slide, please, Glenn. So over the past 8 months, we've obviously been making significant runs on the board. So we've had families volunteered and have been briefed, and they help advocate. If you're a family out there that's listening to this and want to, support us, we'd love to have a conversation with you. We're looking for people in every single state of Australia. This is not one state or the other. And it's just basically telling your story and, relating that back to newborn screening. The newborn screening message is really important.
We should say there that we are incredibly grateful to those families who have already come forward and been part of building a presence in the media of how important it is that each state puts newborn screening on their panel. Puts SMA on the newborn screening panel. So really grateful for those families that have come forward.
So we're not only working with families, we've got clinicians and researchers and other stakeholders on board, and it's really lovely to have, that expert level of expertise coming on and talking from a clinical point of view to get the facts and the figures out there for sure. We've had lots of meetings with government stakeholders, and there's many more to come. I know I've got a really important one coming up in May that I'm hopefully very excited about. So, they continue. I've written countless emails to stakeholders. Every single week there's a different email to, not blast out there, but, talk to these people. It's really important. We've got this in the news. We've had 125 articles written about newborn screening or had something about newborn screening in it, and some call to action. So it's that sort of collaborative approach is what we've been trying to come up with here to make sure that everyone's involved. It's not, I can't do this alone. I need help. This is a huge bucket of stuff to be able to dish out. So everyone needs to play their part. And, that's not only families, clinicians, MPs. We've had, a number of MPs who put their hand up and, said they're willing to help. They either speak out in Parliament about it, they talk to their local state counterpart. Milton Dick, for example, has been a great advocate in Queensland. I've had some amazing conversations, or we've had some amazing conversations with him. So, it's just making sure that you're sending a message out there and they're taking that message to somebody else so they can become the champion in this cause as well. And without it, and without all those stakeholders being involved, we won't get this across the line. It's so important. Next slide, please. So a highlight was launching research to bring to the community expectations to life. So some facts and figures we found: 9 out of 10 surveyed believed it is important to have more health information about a newborn baby as early as possible. 81% found that we would rather know the risk of the newborn's serious health condition when considering whether they have a baby or not. The majority believe having an early newborn health information would allow them to make better medical decisions that could improve the health of their child. So that's 79%. 74% would seek additional medical advice and support, and 64% would put in place life plans that would help them take care of their child better. 73% agree that the newborn screening program, should include a test for the leading cause of genetic death in children under the age of 2. And half of those surveys do not believe Australia is a world leader in newborn screening. And, that's sad. We say that Australia are leaders in lots of things. Unfortunately, it's not newborn screening yet.
I think we did this survey, or this survey was done in 2020, I think, or early 2021.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, it's hard to remember exactly when things have happened. But to build an evidence bank, so pilot study happening in New South Wales, so a really strong clinical evidence base that we were able to then take forward. But this was about understanding what the Australian community felt about newborn screening in general, and then specifically about SMA screening. So it was quite a substantial piece of research, surveying members of the community to find out not just the answers we see here, but there were questions about, well, who should pay for it? What do grandparents think as opposed to what parents think? So there was quite a lot of interesting information that came out of it, but some key things that we've highlighted here that have been used as evidence that we roll out in those meetings that we've been talking about to represent what the community thinks.
I think they surveyed about 1,000 people with these all over the country.
Yeah.
It was compelling information. It was fantastic. What came back, and like you said, they're the key takeaways from what was surveyed. Next slide, please, Glenn. So obviously we're making significant progress in all of these states. We'll start with Western Australia. They have a commitment to have a trial program that will begin in around August 21. That's what we've worked out and come to understand from WA. If you'd like to do,
I think that should be 22.
Oh, 22. Sorry, within 12 months from August 21. I think that's when they announced it.
Right. Yeah. Well, they haven't yet commenced it. So. Challenge for them. Come on, WA, because that announcement was a while back.
So you want to do South Australia?
Okay, I can talk about South Australia. So South Australia was interesting because we started our discussions before the state election, and were feeling pretty good about the feedback that we were getting, and then bang, we were in caretaker mode, and everything had to stop. But we have had initiated by South Australia a meeting scheduled to say we want to do the next bit now. So we're pretty excited about that. We think
fingers crossed.
Yes, we have our fingers crossed for South Australia and everywhere else.
Yeah, so in Tasmania, the capability work is ongoing. They're a little less engaging. So we've had a couple of conversations, but not much has come out of Tasmania, unfortunately.
So anyone in Tassie?
Come and help us.
Yes, we need to ramp up.
We need you.
Yeah, so in Victoria, we have had or are about to have meetings departmentally and with the Minister's office about our expectations about what Victoria will do about newborn screening. And we are confident that Victoria would like to implement newborn screening as we are with other states. Victoria just needs to put its money into the implementation and get us over the line.
Yep, that's exactly right. So in New South Wales ACT, obviously we know we have the pilot program up there that's been ongoing, and we're just, again, speaking to the powers to be at New South Wales Health to make sure that that rolls over into their budget and it's not just an ongoing month-to-month continuation of the trial of the pilot. So that work is close and it's continuing. And finally, Queensland, if you'd like to talk about Queensland.
Queensland has been an interesting and ongoing discussion, because there was some Queensland we started talking to about the time where the federal process changed as to how decisions were made. So there was a bit of confusion about whether the SMA process was finished or not in Queensland. So with the assistance of the Department of Health in Canberra, actually, we were able to assist the Department of Health in Queensland to understand what actually were the facts about where things were at that time. So Queensland have said, yes, we have the money. Yes, we really want to go forward. We are, however, waiting on a decision of SCID, which is another condition that has been going through the assessment and approval process at a federal level. And Queensland is the only state that have actually said we're waiting on that because we actually want to implement those onto a panel together. And that decision has not been announced yet. There has not been a federal approval recommended to the states for SCID at this stage. However, we think that that's imminent.
Yes, they have been playing a few games with us, Queensland. You know, they originally asked for the Chief Medical Officer letter, which they were never going to get because SMA was approved prior to the change of the program. So that held us up for a little bit. Now we've got, the rollout of SCID as well. So that's holding us up a little bit further. So, we're back in the mix and we'll play with you and, come back and give you the facts so that we can try and get this across the line as quickly as possible.
And there's some of those people that know we're coming for them.
That's for sure. Next slide, please. So while reform is on the way, while reform is on the agenda federally, we spoke before about Labor having their commitment. They're obviously seeking to improve the process of the tasks of the tests available. And, I will say this has been arduous, long process that should not have been drawn out this long, for sure.
I think that we all want rigour around decision making. We're all taxpayers, so we all want rigour around how decisions are made. The challenge of dealing with every state to get them to make the same decision has been one with SMA. I'm not aware of another concentrated effort into every state by an organisation like SMA. What we're learning through this process is how you can make it more efficient. How, as a condition group, how do we become more efficient? How do we get, instead of having to talk to 20 people on an ongoing basis
for 12 months or more.
Yeah, how do we make those processes more efficient in an implementation sense, but also the implementation of the new federal process, which was supposedly implemented in December, but is still being looked at for how can that become more efficient? And that's one of the things that Labor have also talked about and was part of the anyone who did a submission for the Zimmerman report. So there was a parliamentary inquiry last year. When that results were released, one of the things that was recommended was to look at the newborn screening process, the HTA process, which is now part of SMA. And now I'm talking in acronyms, so I apologise for that. But it's just one of the complexities that goes along with something that sounds so simple and sounds like a no-brainer. I mean, of course.
Everyone's talking about it being a no-brainer, but it is not as simple as we thought it might have been. You know, I had a conversation with someone the other day, and like, you would have thought nearly 12 months ago that this would have been recommended by now and funded by now, and we're still having, you know, the same conversation with 7 different states about, you know, these similar issues. So hopefully us being the test case will ensure that other diseases don't have such an arduous process, and that it clears the way or clears the pathway for somebody else. There has to be someone that goes first, right?
And from the Genetic Support Network of Victoria, which is my organisation, we're really grateful to SMA, and we're thrilled to be part of this process, because what we're learning will make a difference to not just the SMA community, but the wider genetic undiagnosed and rare disease community. We're very grateful for that.
And if that's how we can take our learnings from, you know, us doing this for you, then I'm super grateful. It hasn't only just helped SMA, it's helped all those other conditions as well. And, you know, that's the lasting piece that you need to have. Next slide, please. So what are we learning along our journey? It's hard work. It's hard work. Many states are upset with the federal government in several areas of health, a barrier.
No surprise there.
No surprise. Political support to overcome these barriers is critical. The conversations that we have with key political people has been our saviour. Without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. COVID has seriously impacted and interrupted the policy making, and, you know, some of the teams responsible have been moved away from their team and had to, you know, go somewhere else and then come back. The trial program essentially equals a long-term commitment. No government will wind back a program. So once you come onto a newborn screening sort of pilot, it will eventually go on to, you know, and be budgeted for. How long's a piece of string? We're not really sure, but
history suggests that if a pilot program gets up, it will translate into an ongoing program. So we will not be disappointed if a state announced that it was going to, like WA did, that it's going to do a pilot program.
Yeah. The next one is our voices and experiences matter. We have the facts and figures, but it's our stories that drive change. And thank you to everyone that has participated in a story, a newspaper article, a TV interview, a radio interview, whatever that may be. All your voices have collectively made a difference to this campaign, so thank you. And the last point is federal Labor's commitment is welcome, but again, we don't know how long it'll take to implement. And we can't let the decision makers off the hook. We must continue to advocate loudly, and we do. Monica and I have a standing meeting once a week, and we've been doing this for nearly 12 months now. So this is on the forefront of our mind every week. We talk about it every week. We come up with a different strategy. Who are we talking to today? Who do we need to talk to this week? Where are we going? What are we doing? It's been a long process.
It has. And just further to that last point there, with the announcement of the $38.4 million, there's some concern that it allows the states to kind of go, well, we'll wait now, and because if there is going to be some money attached to newborn screening, well, maybe we'll wait. We can't have that. So that's part of our advocacy right now is, well, that's bonus money you didn't know you were going to get. This program has to be implemented. So, and we've been talking about it for some time. It's not a surprise that the program has to be implemented. So just get on with it. Just in your state, get on with it. And when that $38.4 million is provided, which is conditional on so many things, first of which is the Labor Party getting voted in, but then it's going to be timing. How long does it take to be able to make that money available to the states, and so on and so on. We can't wait. So we will continue to be out there using our voices to get change.
Most definitely. Next slide, please. So again, we'd love to have you guys involved. Your voice and your experience is critical. We cannot do this without you, and we'd love to work with you. So please engage us, and we can support you in, and show you the tools and give you the tools to be able to talk to maybe your local federal politician, your local state politician, whoever it may be. It may be a letter or an article in a local paper, or a conversation on the radio, whatever that might be. We would love for you to be involved.
We've got template letters, we've got template emails, we've got template text messages.
We got it all.
We can help you with all of that. And we should actually say also at this point a huge thank you to Novartis.
Yes. It's without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. And it's through their ongoing support, for newborn screening that we are as close as we are. There's no way that I could have pulled this off by myself, or even if I had you, we could have pulled this off together. This has been on multiple stakeholder, engagement, and everyone has played their part. So thank you very much. So does anyone, I think that's the last slide. We've got a question here. Is capability work, e.g. Victoria and Tasmania, mostly planning, or is it a physical making sure facilities are ready? So some of it is logistics, and some of it is making sure they have the infrastructure in place. So basically, they haven't, I know here in Victoria, I don't believe they've got equipment yet. Or they're in the process of getting equipment. Yep. So they're not quite ready for the program. So that does take a little bit of time. Obviously, they also then need to train people to do the testing and make sure they have capability for, however many babies are born in Victoria each year. In Tasmania, how many? About 200,000.
There's about 300,000 across the country.
Well, there you go. So, making sure that they've got the infrastructure in place. It's not an easy test. It's got to go through a rigorous process. So I hope that answers your question. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay, in that regard, oh, hold on. No, yes, good. We're done. All out, all solved. So thank you, Monica, for coming and having a chat with us today. It's been wonderful.
Thank
you. I hope everyone has got a little bit of information on just how complicated it is to get something like this across the line, not in one state, but in every state and territory of Australia. It's fairly arduous and very...
We're on it.
We're on it. We're close. Hopefully we can make some good announcements soon.